Hey coaches, welcome back to Football Talk with Coach Chip. Today's video is the third and final preview of the Jet Manual. That's right, the Jet Manual is here. After over 4 years, off and on, of working on the Jet Manual, it is done. Been out now for a couple of weeks, but sold a good portion of them. I didn't get it promoted. I dropped it, debuted it, premiered it right before we went out of town on a long time planned trip, and didn't get to do much along the lines of promotion for it. But it is picking up steam, but I wanted people to see what was in it. And so that's what we're going to do today, the third and final time. Why run the Jet? Why should you run the Jet? Here's an opportunity to support Football Talk with Coach Chip, the podcast and the video channel. buymeacoffee.com/Coach Chip. The videos have always been free. They'll continue to be free. 90% of the resources, or really more than 90% of the resources, are free. But it's just getting to us a lot of time doing it. So whatever I told somebody a while back, and you probably heard me say it before, either on the podcast or here on the video channel, that the little bit of money that I get kind of equates to my coach's supplement. In some parts of the country, they call it a stipend. And it really doesn't pay for your time, but it kind of justifies the time you spent or spend doing football. And this is my coaching now. I want to coach coaches. So everything remains free except for those 4 things that we sell that we'll talk about later. You can find the podcast now on Spotify as I record this video. It is Sunday morning, just dropped episode with Nigel Hanley. He is the head football coach of the University of East Anglia in the United Kingdom. I'm currently talking to another coach who coaches American football in Europe. Going to get him on as well. Got several lined up, trying to get them in before they really get busy coaching ball. And I still got to figure out, what do y'all want to hear on the podcast when football season gets here and I can't get coaches? Tell me. That's a good idea. If you have an idea for a video or a podcast guest, contact me, or a podcast episode theme, contact me at siegel.chip@gmail.com. Still offering that summer freebie. And we'll keep offering it. You can get it whenever you want it. It'd be on the freebie list, which would be in perpetuity. But I just decided I wanted to promote it during the summer because coaches are getting ready to start their August practices. And even though it's already started, it's not too late. If you don't like your system for scheduling your practices and setting them up in an orderly fashion to keep you on schedule, this is a great way to do it. It's a Microsoft Excel file that you can get and download. And yes, it's safe. You can get this and download it to your computer, and then you just plug into the cells what you want. It's set up for a 2 platoon, 1 platoon. It's got sample installs. It's got the 3-day work week. It's got like the first week of summer practice. It's really cool, absolutely free. And you just put it on your computer and you'll have that thing forever. All right, let's get into why you should run the Jet. And let's start with why I love the Jet so much, why I fell in love with it. I fell in love with it in 1992 because it was different. And I think by nature I'm a bit of an objectionist and want to be different. And I fell in love with it, but we were an I team, and we were an I/split back team. Now, running out of split back's a piece of cake because you got that one. You're always going to have a back set to the play side to lead around the end. The I was a little bit of a challenge. And I remembered, I was just talking to a buddy of mine that I used to coach with, and we ran the mess out of Jet together down in Southeast Alabama. And he's gone over to the dark side now and is an administrator, but he's Darth Vader because he is a superintendent. But anyway, we were talking about it, and he said, "Yeah, I remember when we put the jet in, you said you had a pass with it." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, what made you offset your fullback?" And I said, "I just remembered the Rams doing it back in the 80s when they had Eric Dickerson, and they would offset him. And we had actually offset our fullbacks before, and even eventually got it because we were split back so we would offset the fullback and run outside veer from using the tailback as the pitch man, which was really good because now you could, without having to flip your backs, you could have your best dive back diving it and your best perimeter back being the pitch man. I digress. But why do I love the jet? It's great for teams that are undersized, which I've had a history, I guess, because coaching, 25 of the 40 years that I coached, I was at smaller schools. But it's great for undersized O-linemen, which you get a lot at your sub-varsity level and at your smaller schools where kids have to go both ways. It's good for all teams. I mean, any team can run it. You've seen, the Rams run it and the Chiefs run it. So obviously, those guys can run anything they want to run just about because they have professionals. But it's really good for your fast teams. If you can use jet motion, you can use jet motion on almost any play. There's not many plays you can't run jet motion, and it's going to affect the defense. Formation flexibility, you can run it out of most formations. We talked about that in preview number 1 about a week ago. And I love running jet out of empty. Empty is a beautiful thing. This list was made 7-8 years ago, and I've been telling people ever since, empty is a beautiful thing. If you got a quarterback that can run, get an empty and run the dog out of jet. And of course, nowadays, more and more teams putting their best football player getting the snap. It doesn't have to be your stereotypical, prototypical quarterback. If he's got a little bit of leadership about him and he's a good athlete, put his butt back there and run jet. It's an easy way to get the football to your fastest kids. And they get it with a running start, y'all. Getting to the edge. You got a kid that runs a 4.8 40. And somebody out there saying, "Well, that's slow." You've never coached small school ball, and you just told everybody that. 4.8's not slow. It ain't 4.6 or 4.4, but it ain't slow. You got a 4.7, 4.8 kid, and you give him a head start. How much faster is he when you're talking about linebackers who are starting from a stagnant start? When you're talking about DNs who are lined up with their hand on the ground. Now, they may be a little bit wider than the jetter when the ball is snapped, but they're not once that mesh is complete. So if they're going 75 to 90% of top speed, which is the reason we don't read the jet post-snap, then he's getting to that edge quicker. I also like the jet. Love to run it because it makes linebackers and D linemen run. They've got to run sideline to sideline. Even if you don't run jet, if you just run jet motion, you don't run jet but a few times a game, but you run jet motion 15 times a game, they're having to react to that. And also, too, if the defense is going to stop it, their DBs are going to tackle. The best success teams have had against our teams over the years are the 2 high safety teams, which opens up other things for you, spinning down that jet side safety and us not being able to block him for whatever reason. And get this, they got to tackle in space. Just because, they're schemed to come down, they've got to now make a tackle on the move in space. You turn it into an open field tackling drill. And you got to love your chances on that. It eliminates linebacker run fits. They've been taught that. They get out there and they do it every day during their ID time, those inside linebackers. And now all of a sudden you're running jet. And especially if you're like me and you like pulling that play side guard, those gaps disintegrate. And now they're just running. You turn it into a pursuit drill. And again, going back to what I just said, open field tackling. And again, inside linebackers are used to making tackles inside on zone, on power. Now you're making them make those tackles out in space. There is a reason they're inside linebackers and not outside linebackers. For every inside linebacker blitzing, there's one less in pursuit. Over the years, it really helped our passing game because it eliminated blitzing for the most part, which you got to love. The defensive front starts flowing. Once they start moving, talking about D linemen, linebackers, now you can gash them inside. You can come back and run your counter. You can come back and run your downhill power. It doesn't have to be a quarterback power. There's film in the manual of us running it out of what we call pistol. And we ran jet out of pistol, especially we didn't need the running back to be out there as the extra blocker. Put his butt in the pistol and run that jet motion. Quarterback doesn't have to fake it, just snap it at the right time. Jetter fakes the jet, and you're giving that power to the same side as the jet to the running back. That's good stuff. When they start flowing is when because they get out of their lanes, they get out of their fits. And if they try to use safeties, as I mentioned earlier, now it's time to throw over the top of them. So these are some of the reasons why I love the jet. One of the most successful jet teams in college football over the last almost 10 years, been about 8 years, I think, since that coach got to Ferris State up in Michigan. And they've played for several national titles. They've won 1 or 2, I can't remember. But I've done a lot of research on them, and I accidentally discovered they ran jet because I found them studying their gap scheme. So they're a lot like what Coach Chip does on offense, jet and gap scheme. But why do they do it? According to their OC, it's a way to get their playmakers the ball, and the defense can't scheme it away. If your playmaker is a slot receiver and you're trying to throw it to him, they can do things to take that away. It's much harder to throw it, even if it's quick game or fast screens. What's more difficult, a little push pass on the jet or a handoff on the jet? Or taking the snap and now throwing the thing 20 yards to the outside? Or throwing the thing, most of my quick game, you're reading that hole player, the outside backer, where a defense can make you throw it to another player to get it away from your playmaker. The jet takes that away from the defense. Now, they may be able to tackle him, but they can't stop him from getting it if you're running jet to your playmaker. And that's the reason why so many pro teams are running it now. They want to get it in this dude's hands. And that's a surefire way to do it. Motion manipulates defenses. They've got to adjust right before the snap. They have to adjust. And it changes the defense. It's an ever-changing scene when you're running jet. I've even seen some teams now, they'll run that jet and they'll run him across the quarterback's face and not snap it. He sticks his cleats in the ground, reverses field, and they come back and run jet the other way. It's like a one-man jet counter. And so now you're making that defense move. And a new thing is so many defenses now are going to man or matchup stuff because of the RPO game. Well, the jet is difficult versus difficult on man teams because now that whoever's over that number 2 guy or whoever it is you're putting in jet motion, he has to run with them or they have to bump. They have to exchange responsibilities right before the snap. So that's a plus, and you're manipulating the defense. You're making the final call of what you're going to see right before the snap, and they have to adjust to it. Okay, the jet sweep helps create natural packages, according to Ferris State, in the game plan that can counter the defense's reaction. You can look at it and say, okay, here's what they can do to take away jet. What can we do? Okay, this is what they do. It leaves the power open. It leaves the zone open. You can turn zone into a counterplay. Here's why. You fake jet right and you run zone left. So now you got the defense flowing to the right, but your line and your back are going to the left. So without even having to worry about putting in counter blocking, you're now running zone, and it becomes a de facto counter in essence. So you can do all kind of things because there's only so many things they can do. And it's based on, of course, their personnel and all that. I love the jet because I love giving the ball to the fastest kid on the team with a running start. We went through a period where we had several fast guys. They weren't very big. We didn't want to run them inside a ton because of their lack of size, but we wanted to get the ball to them. And you don't have to have a quarterback that can really spin it to run the jet. There's been years, I told y'all before that follow the channel, In our second state championship, we didn't run much jet. Why? Because we had a quarterback to get that thing out there on target, on time, on our fast screens. So it got it there. The fast screens are fast. That's why they're called that. And it actually gets the ball to the perimeter faster than jet. But what if you don't have a quarterback that can do that? Does that make sense? So the jet is much easier than throwing it to them on the perimeter. And of course, it's a lot less risky than throwing it to them. Jet motion is a formation change. I mentioned it earlier. Immediately before the ball is snapped. Right before the ball is snapped, you're going from 2x2 to trips. If you line up in a pro set, you're going from a pro set to trips. Does that make sense? Or you line up in trips, and now when you run the jet motion, you're changing it back to 2x2. They have to be in a defense. They can account for that. Because just because you're in motion doesn't mean you're running jet. All right, you can do some damage with the jet if you only get 3 or 4 blocks on the edge. That's another plus for it. You don't have to block everybody. You're making the backside irrelevant, and in some cases, you're making the inside linebackers irrelevant. Because if they're making tackles, that ball's 4 or 5 yards down the field. That's a good running play. All right, here's a sample season for us back about 7 years ago. We ran the jet 123 times in 15 games. We scored 24 TDs, actually just running the jet play. Not jet motion, just the jet. But yet we faked jet or ran jet motion and ran something else 124 times with 17 TDs. See how that? Pretty cool. So when we faked the jet, we scored 7 TDs off things like jet power, jet counter, jet pass. There's 247 plays with jet motion, jet action in one season. Of course, it was 15 games, so it was a season and a half. So in a 10-game season, what would that come down to? About 200? If we kept the averages, I'm not a mathematician. We had a total of 41 touchdowns when using jet motion. That was half the TDs. We scored 82 or 83 touchdowns that season. 41 of them were off some type of jet action. In the state title game alone, on a field that had just snowed, we ran jet 13 times for 2 TDs. And then we faked jet 14 times. We had like 60 snaps, roughly. I think it was 57. 27 plays. So again, right at half of our snaps had some kind of jet action. 50% of our plays had a jet motion in the championship game on a field that had been snowing all night and all morning. That doesn't happen very much in Alabama, but it happened that year. All right, so including practice, went back and looked at our practices and had a pretty good average. How many times, we ran jet drill 5 minutes a day, and we averaged this many reps per session. And I did the math. We rep jet over 1,200 times in about 19 weeks because you had the 4 weeks of preseason and the 15 weeks of the season. We repped, 16 weeks because we had a bye week in there. 20 weeks, 1,200 reps. To be good at something, you've got to rep it. When you execute the jet correctly, it's not just a play. It opens up everything else. And there's so many things you can do off of it. I'm not going to insult your intelligence and read this to you. You can pause it and read it for yourself. I say with jet motion, you're only limited by your imagination and your player's ability level. All right, the jet manual is here. Order your copy today at siegel.chip@gmail.com. Don't forget, we're doing deep dives into any of the concepts that we cover here on the channel, and especially on these resources that we give away and the resources that we sell. Offensive line manual, just did 3 this morning. Woke up on a Sunday morning. Some of y'all don't sleep because I didn't go to bed till about 11, got up about 6:30, and Lord have mercy, I had 3. I said, when do they sleep? And I looked, and it wasn't like they were living overseas or something. The Big Book of Buck sold a couple of those this week. That definitely is a vanity project. I just love the buck, and I cannot lie. I'm doing in-person or Zoom clinics, consultations, installs. Hit me up if you need anything. By the way, when you buy the jet manual, I become your jet consultant. Don't forget a chance to support Football Talk with Coach Chip. buymeacoffee.com/Coach Chip. Those of y'all that know, I don't drink coffee, but you can still buy me a drink. Folks, order your jet manual today. This is the last preview we're going to do on the jet manual. Going to get back to doing get back to our regularly scheduled programming. All right, be sure to subscribe. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share the PP out of it to all your coaching buddies. Thank you so much for all you've done for Football Talk with Coach Chip. Don't forget the podcast. It's on Spotify and Apple. Got a conversation with a coach from the United Kingdom. Just went up early this morning. All right, until next time, come on, y'all. Be elite.